The café on 6th Avenue was nothing special. Its windows were fogged most mornings, the coffee was ordinary, and the walls carried the smell of years of spilled cream and sugar. Yet, for a young waitress named Lena, this café was her lifeline. She was only 22, juggling double shifts to cover rent, groceries, and her younger brother's school fees. Life hadn't been kind to her. Her parents had passed in an accident when she was just 17, and from then on, responsibility sat heavy on her shoulders. But even in her exhaustion, Lena had a heart that refused to harden. It was late November when she first noticed him. A man sat hunched near the trash cans behind the café, wrapped in a torn blanket, a pair of crutches leaning beside him. His hair was tangled, his beard untrimmed, and his legs, one twisted awkwardly, told the story of a permanent injury. Most people passed him by, their eyes sliding away quickly. But Lena couldn't. One evening, after her shift, she stepped outside with a paper bag in her hands. Inside was a sandwich, some fries, and a cup of coffee she'd bought with her own tips. "Sir," she said softly, approaching him. The man looked up, his gray eyes sharp despite the weariness. "I thought maybe you'd want something warm." He stared at her for a long moment before whispering, "Why would you waste food on me?" "Because no one deserves to be hungry," she replied simply. For the first time in months, he smiled. That one act became a ritual. Every day, Lena set aside part of her tips to bring him something, sometimes soup, sometimes a burger, sometimes just coffee with extra cream. She learned his name was David. He spoke little of his past, only that he'd been unlucky. "Life has a way of kicking a man down," he muttered once. "Some people just stay down. But you're still here," Lena encouraged. "That counts for something." Customers and even her coworkers whispered about her. "Why waste your money on a beggar?" One colleague sneered, "You'll never change his life." But Lena didn't stop. To her, it wasn't about changing his life, it was about reminding someone they still mattered. What Lena didn't know was that David was watching her, too. Not just how she fed him, but how she lived. He noticed her slipping on worn-out shoes until her feet blistered. He noticed her skipping meals to save for her brother's school books. He noticed her walking him home from school sometimes, her tired face lighting up with a smile just to keep him happy. Each act of kindness, each sacrifice, imprinted itself on his heart. Then came the harshest winter New York had seen in years. Snow piled high, winds howled through the streets, and many of the city's homeless didn't survive the nights. Lena feared for David. She bought him a thicker blanket from a thrift store, slipping it into his hands with trembling fingers. "You'll freeze out here," she begged. "There has to be a shelter you can go to." He only shook his head. "Shelters, they take away your crutches, your dignity. I'm fine here, but thank you, Lena. You're the only one who remembers I exist." Her eyes welled with tears. "You exist, David. Don't you ever forget that." One Friday evening, after a grueling double shift, Lena stepped outside with his usual meal. But David wasn't there. Panic surged in her chest. She searched the alley, the nearby streets, even asked around. Nobody had seen him. For 3 days, he was gone. Then, on the 4th day, as she cleaned tables inside the cafe, the door swung open. David stood there, but he wasn't in rags anymore. He wore a tailored coat, polished shoes, and his beard was neatly trimmed. The crutches were gone. He stood tall, supported only by a sleek cane. The cafe went silent. "Lena," he said, his voice echoing in the stunned room, "I need to talk to you." Confused and shaken, Lena followed him outside. What happened? How did you?" He smiled gently. "I owe you the truth." And then, with calm clarity, he told her everything. He wasn't just a crippled beggar. He was David Harrington, a billionaire businessman who had vanished from public view after a tragic accident claimed his wife and daughter. The crash had left him with a permanent injury. Grief consumed him, and he disappeared from the world, living among the homeless to escape the pain. "I lost faith in humanity," he admitted. "Money couldn't heal me. Friends disappeared. People only cared about my wealth. But then you, a poor waitress with nothing to spare, fed me, talked to me, treated me like a man, not a burden." His eyes glistened. "You restored my faith." Lena's knees weakened. "You're saying, you're a billionaire?" "Yes," he said firmly. "And because of you, I've remembered who I am." From that day, David's visits changed. He no longer sat outside waiting for scraps, he sat inside, ordering meals for both of them. He insisted on paying, though Lena still tried to sneak in kindnesses. One evening, he looked at her across the table. Lena, you've given me back my life. Now I want to give you yours. She frowned. I don't understand. I want to pay for your brother's education. I want to give you a home, security, everything you deserve. Not as charity, but as gratitude. Tears filled her eyes. David, I didn't help you for money. I just wanted you to eat. He reached across the table, taking her trembling hand. And that's why you deserve everything. Months later, Lena's life was unrecognizable. Her brother was enrolled in one of the best schools in the city. She no longer worked endless shifts. Instead, she managed a charitable foundation that David started, in her name. The Lena Hope Foundation fed and housed thousands of homeless across the city. Reporters clamored for the story of how a billionaire had been disguised on the streets, but David always gave the same answer. This isn't about me, it's about her, a young woman who had nothing, yet gave everything. Years later, at the grand opening of a new shelter, David stood on the stage beside Lena. Cameras flashed, but he leaned close so only she could hear. You know, he whispered, the day you handed me that first sandwich, I wanted to die. That simple act kept me alive. Lena's eyes shone. And you reminded me that kindness is never wasted. The crowd erupted in applause, but for them, the moment was private. A waitress and a beggar. One act of kindness, and a truth that changed both their lives forever.